Today I'm bringing you some exclusive content on how to build a meal plan for fat loss, a step-by-step guide. Let's get started. When a caloric deficit is present in your body is forced to find an alternative source of fuel. Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Christine Hronec. I am the CEO and founder of Gauge Girl Training, an online meal planning and coaching service. I'm also the food scientist and co-owner of Muscle Gauge Nutrition. Today I'm bringing you some exclusive content from muscleandstrength.com on how to build a meal plan for fat loss, a step-by-step guide. So let's get started. Step one in building a fat loss meal plan is setting a realistic goal. When reducing body fat, the goal is to cut body fat without sacrificing your lean muscle mass. And in the bodybuilding community, there are so many programs out there that guarantee results in 30 days, like 60 days. But the reality is, if you want to preserve your muscle and lean out, you definitely want to be sure that you're doing this at a slow rate. Now, the question is, how fast can you actually drop body fat and maintain the muscle? Realistically, we're talking about 1% body fat per week. This is if you're on point with nutrition, training, cardio, no slip-ups. If you are going about it in a moderate approach, you can definitely expect about 0.5 to 1% body fat percentage reduction per week. All right, so extremely lean body fat percentages for men are in the 4 to 8% range. For females, we're talking the 8 to 12% range. So that's extremely shredded and ripped. Now, what most people would want in order to look good on the beach, we're talking about in the maybe 10 to 12% range for men, and perhaps even 18 to 22% range for women. So that's a wide spectrum, and it's going to depend on how much you're really going to want to commit to this. All right, so step number 2 is measuring your BMR. Your basal metabolic rate is very important because this allows you to determine how many calories your body needs at rest just to function, assuming that you were not moving at all for 24 hours. But this is really important because you can have this measured by an indirect calorimetric device. You can have this done at a doctor's office or weight loss clinic. This is essentially about maybe $50 to $100 to have this measured. And I had my RMR measured a few months ago, and it was within less than 3 to 5% of my calculated RMR. So that was really exciting. So one equation that you can do if you're not going to get your BMR measured is the Harris-Benedict equation. Now, Muscle and Strength has an online calculator that allows you to easily calculate your BMR. If you don't want to use that and you want to see how it's broken down from scratch, I'm going to show you this equation. It's based off of some mathematical models that take into account age, height, weight, gender. So here is that equation. So for women, the BMR for males these two equations are what you would use to calculate the BMR for a male or a female. Now, I do suggest just take into account the fact that for females, you need to multiply these factors times your weight in pounds, right here, times height in inches, and age in years. So just be careful with order of operations with your arithmetic. It's pretty straightforward. However, online calculators are very helpful for that. If we took an example of a 30-year-old male that is 6'2" and 230 pounds, we would calculate their BMR to be, so again, this is for a male that is 6'2", 30 years old, and they currently weigh 230 pounds. If this is your situation, your RMR would be 2239 calories. So this number is actually very, very important because this tells us that a male of these circumstances is going to need 2239 calories just to function at rest. And step number 3 is determining your activity level. So once you have your BMR, you can figure out exactly how many calories your body needs to maintain your energy expenditure needs, which is very, very important. If you don't have these fundamental baseline things, you may be either eating too little or underfueling your body, and you might end up losing muscle as opposed to losing fat. So this is why you need to know these things first. So in order to figure out how active you are, there is an activity factor that you need to apply to this number. So here are the activity level factors and what they mean. So for activity level, if you are at about a 1.2, this is essentially sedentary. You're not really doing anything, you don't exercise. If you are at 1.375, you are lightly active. You might exercise 1 to 3 times a week, nothing too intense over there. If you are at a 1.55, you are working out 3 to 5 times a week. If you are at 1.725, you are working out 6 to 7 times a week. And lastly, if you're at a 1.9, you have a very physically demanding job, something of this nature if you're at a 1.9. So I'm going to assume that this person, this male, this situation is moderately active. He's working out 3 to 5 times a week. So we're going to take his BMR, which is this, and we're going to multiply it times the activity factor. So in our case, that's 2239 times 1.55. And what does that tell us? That tells us that this person needs 3470.45 kilocalories per day. Now, in order to build a fat loss meal plan for this person, we're going to have to take this value and imply a caloric deficit on top of that. So step number 4 in building a fat loss meal plan is determining your caloric deficit. When a caloric deficit is present in your body is forced to find an alternative source of fuel. And in all reality, a caloric deficit is essentially an energy deficit, which is very important. But in order to allow your body to use stored body fat as the primary source of fuel, you do need to reduce your caloric intake below your maintenance level. So right now for this person, our maintenance level is at 3740 per day. So we want to take this and apply a caloric deficit. So a safe estimate is to assume that we're trying to lose 1 pound of body fat per week. 1 pound of body fat is 3,500 calories. 3,500 calories over 7 days is 500 calories per day. So if we employed a caloric deficit of minus 500 calories, that puts us at a caloric intake of 2970 right here. 2970 kilocalories per day for this person to lose body fat. Alright, so now that we know how many calories we need to consume per day for our example case of the 6'2", 230-pound male seeking to drop body fat, we know that this person needs to consume 2970 calories per day. And the next step is we're going to determine the macronutrient breakdown. Now, there were 2 scientists, Rubner and Atwater, that used the bond calorimeter to quantify how much heat of combustion is given off by protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And what they ended up finding is that they measured the heat of combustion, which is how much heat it takes for each macronutrient to combust. And combustion is defined as a chemical breaking down into carbon dioxide and water and heat. So for protein, they actually measured it to be 4.1 calories per gram. For carbs, it's 4.1 calories per gram. And fat, it's 9.3 calories per gram. You probably hear 4, 4, and 9 a lot. However, those are estimations, just for rounding, just for simplicity. And the reality is a lot of people do panic when they see that fat is so much more energy dense than protein and carbs. So the question is now, all right, how much should we have? I'm going to start with protein. Nutritionally speaking, for protein is so crucial to make sure that you lose body fat while maintaining as much lean muscle as possible. And the body does require a positive nitrogen balance in order to switch to using fat for fuel. Now, how much protein should you take? I'm going to discuss a few rules of thumb. So in order to properly support fat loss while maintaining lean muscle mass, a general rule of thumb for protein is 1 gram per pound of body weight. However, if you want to be more dialed in and specific, there's a specific range that you may want to consider. Your specific range and your needs may vary anywhere between 0.8 all the way up to 1.5 grams of protein per pound body weight. And I want to just go over a few of those conditions, what they are and why. First, I'm going to talk about 0.50 to 0.7. So this range, if you're at 0.5 to 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight, this is really good for sedentary individuals. These are people who don't really work out, don't really have any related goals. This is like a solid minimum requirement just for general health and function. So for the average healthy adult that is trying to do some kind of exercise, trying to do something, we want to be in the 0.8 to 1.0. Again, this is for the average healthy adult. This is for somebody who's trying to lose fat, build muscle. This is the minimum recommended range. This is the minimum. So this is the minimum requirement. Now, the next range is going to be in the 1 to 1.2 range. This is pretty good for females. I recommend this range for females, especially women that are looking to get toned, lose fat, boost your performance. And then for males, anywhere in the 1 to 1.5, I recommend this range for males whose primary goal is to maintain muscle, drop fat. Again, this is the same here for women. So this spectrum is definitely what you want to look at and consider for how much protein you want to take per day. So for our case, right up here, for how many calories our person can have, we have 2970. I'm going to take that based off of our 230-pound male, and I'm going to put him all the way up at 1.5. So for protein, 230 pounds times 1.5 grams of protein per pound body weight, putting them at 345 grams of protein per day. Now, that takes care of protein. Now, what about fat? I recommend certain ranges for fat. For fat, I recommend between 0.25 to 0.45 grams of fat per pound body weight. Now, dietary fat is essential to support a reduction in subcutaneous fat, so you can't eat no fat. It's definitely important. Not only is this the most energy-dense nutrient, it is important to allow your body to absorb vitamins and minerals, so that's very essential, especially essential to build cell membranes, prevent nerve damage, and enable muscle movement, support blood clotting. So fat's important. However, despite this obvious fact that fat is the most energy dense, you do want to be careful because fat adds up very, very quickly, and it's one of those macros that can really escape you if you're not careful. All of a sudden, a tablespoon of peanut butter, you can't just keep eating more and more because those macros are going to add up very, very quickly. So just make sure that even if you aren't counting your calories and macros, it is definitely good to have some form of measurement control when it comes to that. So in terms of recommended fat levels, this is what I recommend. So for the ranges, in the range of 0.25 to 0.30 grams of fat per pound body weight, this is definitely the minimum requirement This is definitely low fat, very, very low fat. This is good for those who are like on contest prep, or you're not gonna be on this for a very long amount of time. It's good for short-term photo shoot prep, shorter-term physique goals. Dipping below 0.25 grams of fat per pound body weight is definitely going to be difficult to sustain, and it's going to impede your brain function. So don't go lower than 0.25, you will literally lose your mind. The next range that I want to look at is 0.30 to 0.04 grams. This is moderate, this is reasonable. You will definitely lose body fat in this range. You will achieve contest prep like results, but without losing your mind, without going as low as competitor style diet. It's definitely good. You'll shred at a reasonable rate and all will be well. Lastly, the last range I want to look at is 0.40 to 0.45 grams of fat per pound body weight. While faster results are in fact achievable for shredding, I would say this is probably the most conservative and realistic approach. This is great and sustainable for those who are seeking to make a long-term lifestyle change. It's not a race, it's not a sprint. You definitely want to go about this slowly and steadily, and you don't want to rush it. I also recommend that most people, if you're brand new to this, you start at this level and then from here reduce and tweak as needed for more dramatic results. So this is the most sustainable. So now, since our case right here, we're taking a 230-pound male. We already calculated our protein. I have him at 345 grams of protein per day. For fat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the reasonable range, because this person, they do want results, they do want to get there, they don't want to wait all day, or they don't want to be taking half of a year or more to get there. So I'm going to use the 0.3 grams of fat per pound body weight for this person. So 230 pounds times 0.3 grams of fat per pound of body weight, and that puts us at 69 grams of fat. Now, lastly, we're going to do carbs. Now, carbs, most people will do a subtraction. So what does that mean? There are different ranges for carbohydrates that I could discuss, but for the sake of calculating the macros, I'm just going to dig right into the calculation. So for carbs, we're going to do a subtraction. So again, we know we have 2970 total calories per day. So what we want to do is figure out the calories from protein. Calories from protein is 345 times 4. Calories from fat is 69 times 9. We're going to take both of these values, subtract them from our total calories per day, and then what we're going to do is we're going to find that value that's left over from carbs and divide it by 4. What we have is 345 times 4, 1380. 69 times 9 is 621. So if we subtract both of these values from 2970, that leaves us with 969 calories for carbs. And then if we take that divided by 4, divide that by 4, that gives us 242.25 grams of carbs. So again, this person has protein, approximately 345 grams, fat, approximately 69 grams, and carbs, 242 grams. So these are the macros. Right? Now that we have our macros for the protein, the fat, and carbs, what we're now going to do is we're going to take those macros and build them into a meal plan for fat loss. So now that we have our macronutrient breakdown, I am just going to take it one step further and show you guys what the percentages are for this. So this ends up being 46.5% protein, approximately 20.9% fat, and carbs, this is approximately 32.6% carbs. Now the ratios can definitely vary. They can be tweaked as needed for you and your goals and your training needs and whatnot, but this is the percentage breakdown that we ended up with. So the thing is, now to plan your meal plan off of these macros, first thing you need to ask yourself is, okay, how many times a day am I going to eat? So I recommend eating at least a minimum of 5 times a day with one post-workout meal. For our example, again, 230-pound male, 6'2", 30 years old. This male does fasted cardio at 6 a.m. What we're going to have here is time and a description. We're also going to assume that this person goes to the gym after work, so they're going to be working out around 5 p.m. So we're going to time the meals every 2 to 3 hours apart. Now that the meal timing is figured out, the first step is to subtract your post-workout meals from your macros, and then we're going to use the balance of the macros to create and fill in the meal plan. For example, if I assume that this person takes 2 scoops of the Muscle Gauge Nutrition Pure Whey Protein Isolate and 1 medium banana post-workout, this meal is 330 calories, 35 grams of carbs, no fat, and 51 grams of protein. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, subtract it from my total daily macros, and then take my total daily macros and divide those numbers by 5 to give me my macros per meal. Alright, so now the next step is to take our macros and subtract out the post-workout meal. So we are assuming that we are taking 2 scoops of the Muscle Gauge Nutrition Whey Protein Isolate and cake batter. We are taking 1 medium banana, 8 ounces of water, and ice. That's optional. The macros for this meal is 330 calories, but it ends up being 51 grams of protein, 0 grams of fat, 35 grams of carbs. So I'm subtracting that, and then that's giving me 295 grams of protein, 69 grams of fat, 240 grams of carbs for the remaining 5 meals. So what I do is I am taking these numbers and I'm dividing them by 5. That gives me 59 grams of protein, 13.8 grams of fat, 48 grams of carbs. This is per meal. So the rule of thumb that I like to employ is I like to employ a rule of thumb where I assume that 4 ounces of lean chicken breast is 25 grams of protein, a half a cup of cooked white rice is 25 grams of carbs, and 1 teaspoon of olive oil is approximately 4 grams of fat. Using those rules of thumb, that would give me approximately 9.44 ounces of chicken per meal. That gives me approximately 1 cup of rice per meal, and that gives me approximately 3.5 teaspoons of olive oil, or I'd say approximately 1 heaping tablespoon. At this point, you can get fancy, you can get creative, you can have some fun with your food list, but this is the rule of thumb that I will use. Okay, I got protein, carb, fat. I can substitute out that chicken for maybe some fish. I could substitute maybe this rice for some sweet potatoes in the appropriate portion. And I can also alternate this fat for, I could either have some protein that has some fat in it, like a steak or some salmon. I can have some avocado. You can have all the variety you want in the world. This is an example of how I would calculate the portions per meal, and then based off of your tastes, likes, and dislikes, you can build up your meal plan to support that. The last step is, if you want a customized meal plan based off of your preference, you can go to gagegirltraining.com, fill out a questionnaire, and we can customize a meal plan for you, whether you're a male or female, young or old, athletic or not. We can customize a plan for your goals. And lastly, you do want to monitor your progress. I suggest monitoring your body fat percentage at least once every other month. Take pictures, take measurements once a week, and don't weigh yourself any more than once a week tops. Make sure when you do so, you do it first thing in the morning, in the fasted state. I just wanted to say lastly is that total fat loss is not linear. People are expecting to lose the same amount every week, and that's just not true. It's actually exponential. You might start seeing results where people expect these types of results, but here's what really happens. And this is time, and this is your weight. This is what really happens. It's like this. And let's say this point in time right here, let's say this is your first week. let's say this is your second week. So right here, they're like, from here to here, like, this is probably a very big difference. But then from here to here, this difference may not be as much, and they get defeated. They're like, dang, nothing's happening. But the thing is, you need to keep going, because the lower and lower and lower you get on your body fat, the harder and harder it's going to be. And at that point, that is when you will want to make some tweaks to your macros as well as your training for continued progress. So thanks for watching, you guys, and take care and have a great day.